Is Will Anderson Jr. still the best edge defender in the 2023 NFL Draft class? We'll discuss it next on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, your favorite podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your boy on the ones and twos, Damian Parson, that you can find me on Twitter at DP_NFL. I'm the national scout for the Draft Network and your local and yet favorite running back guru with the champ. As always, Keith, talk to him.
Man, what's up, everyone? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst at the Draft Network. And like my guy DP always says, man, 2019 national champion, those LSU Fighting Tigers, man, greatest college football team ever assembled. But you know why I'm here, man. And I'm here to bring you championship level takes, content, perspective on the NFL draft, man. So let's go ahead and get into it, DP.
Keith, this is a defensive line discussion that we're about to have. And we're putting D tackles, edge, all that. We're going to get into that, man. But the question that was posed, man, like, there's a lot of buzz right now, Keith. The edge position since the summer, man. Matter of fact, not since the summer. Since the end of last year's draft has been Will Anderson at the top of the mountain by himself. Well, now there's buzz that Tyree Wilson is a true threat to that, right? It seems like Will Anderson's that guy has been at the top, and it's been different people battling for his top spot, right? Like in the rap game, you got Lil Wayne coming for Jay-Z's spot and different things like that back in the day. Like, this is what we're dealing with now with Will Anderson, where it was Myles Murphy, now it's Tyree Wilson. Is Will Anderson, in your perspective, talk to me, how are you feeling about this? Is he still your top edge in this class?
DP. What we doing here, baby? What we doing? And I know this is not directly from you, right? So I'm not going to full on attack you, right? But what are we doing here? Yes, Will Anderson is still the best edge defender in this class. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put this on it. It's not close. It is not close, man. Right now, as a draft community, you know what's going on? We're bored, right? Because Will Anderson was the best edge defender last year. He was the best edge defender this year. So we're looking for some new names and some hot take to pull on, but guess what? That's not what we do at the Locked On NFL Draft, right? We keep it honest. We keep it true to the tape. It's not Will Anderson's fault that he's just that damn good, right? He's just that damn good. So if he's the best edge defender, he's just simply the best edge defender. Now, watching the film, DP, talking about Will Anderson, because I had him in my region as far as when it came down to the scouting reports, right? So I watched him. So there are things that Will Anderson needs to improve on. But is he the best edge defender in his class? Yes, and it's not close, DP. So let's go ahead and end this discussion, man. Listen, one guy plays in the SEC, had double-digit back-to-back years of sacks. Then you had another guy, right, who, shows good production in Tyree Wilson or, even a Myles Murphy, right, if we want to talk about the ACC. But, man, Will Anderson is the best edge defender in this class.
Now, Keith, I won't disagree with you, man. When I first saw the buzz about this, it kind of caught me off guard, right? Because I'm sitting there to myself, I'm like, wait, what is going on? Like, Will Anderson's been that dude this has been 2 years. Like, you know what I mean? And it's just like the crazy stat of how when I think like he has the second fastest 5-yard or 10-yard split on the team. And it's only right behind Jalen Waddle, who's a sub 4.4 guy, possible 4.2 type of speed. I was like, man, that's freaky coming off the edge, man. And you just think about it. This man's been named the Terminator, Keith. And so, no, he's to me still the top edge. But, you look at these other guys, right? Tyree Wilson. Like we're gonna come back to him in a second because you did the deep dive on him. So I want you to be able to kind of really highlight what his skill set is. But you think about Myles Murphy, right? 275 pounds, long, athletic guy, got a good burst off the ball, can convert speed to power, got long arms, and he has a good motor, right? Now, the bend is not he doesn't have the most bend. He's not a steep angle runner at a consistent basis, but we're starting to see that Keith, the top trait anymore when you're looking at these edge rushers, right? You're looking at guys that can collapse the pocket, soften angles and reduce hitting surfaces and make their jobs easier and win as quickly as possible to get around those talented offensive tackles, man. But you really look at this situation and you see it, right? You see Will Anderson at the top, but Myles Murphy is a guy who I would say, Keith, and I'll let you jump in here. I don't think 2022 went the way we expected from now. There's a couple guys on that defensive front for Clemson with the loss of Brent Venables where they didn't look the same. Like it looked hard to recognize those guys at times.
Yeah, it was just a different scheme, right? And you're talking about possibly putting people in different places. And this is something I was always mindful of working in college football. And, obviously you have your defensive installs where, you're drawing up these defensive plays. You want to put this player in this position. And sometimes coaches, they coach their players out of their best situation. You see what I'm saying? Meaning that if this guy is versatile, man, I want to place him here. I want to place him here. I want to place him here. But, man, if he's an edge defender, then just let him play edge, right? Like, I get it that physically and athletically he can drop in coverage, right? But is that how he best serves your defense? But sometimes, with defensive coordinators, man, they get amped up and they want to show this new exotic blitz, right? I got to show the Rex Ryan, or I have to show the Wink Martindale type of blitz package, some of these different blitz packages. But sometimes you just need to, like I always say, man, sometimes keep it simple, right? Just keep it simple, baby. So, man, I think Myles Murphy struggled. I hate to say struggled, right? But it wasn't what we thought, right? We thought we was going to get 15-ish, one of those dominant performances because, this guy is 6'5", 260, right? But it wasn't quite that. But I think that he showed enough on film to where you feel comfortable about, who he is as a prospect. But, yeah, that's just what happens sometimes, DB. Sometimes, NFL – well, I was about to say college coaches, they kind of over coach the scheme and they put their players not so in the best situation. So DP coming up next, we're going to talk about the potential edge prospects, right? Like we talked about the top, man, but here we're always going to dive deep. So we want to talk about those third rounders, those fourth round guys where you can find really good value. If your team needs an edge rusher in this particular class.
What is America's number one and favorite sports book? Easy, FanDuel. And if you're a new customer, that's great news for you because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. All you have to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from money line to point spreads, point scores, 3-pointers drained if you're talking NBA, or touchdown scored if you're talking NFL. Plus, you can make your bets exclusive. You can do player props, all of that stuff. I'm telling you guys, it's the best sports book in America. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same game parlays. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Keith, you talked about, as you segued us into this topic, just getting into the deeper into the edge class. But I want to give you the opportunity real quick to talk about Tyree Wilson because a lot of people, I feel like he's getting all the buzz nationally. I don't think the family, I don't think our listeners and a lot of draft fans really know what this young man is capable of. So I want to give you just a quick moment to kind of talk about Tyree Wilson in his game.
Yeah, so Tyree Wilson, for those who don't know, right, listed at 6'6", 270 pounds, right? So you're talking about a big boy, right? You're talking about a really big guy. And this guy plays with straight power, right? Like his game is this: reduced inside of the offensive tackle and coming off with straight power. This guy has strong hands. He can collapse the pocket. He's physical. His power is overwhelming to offensive linemen at times, and that's the very attractive thing about Tyree Wilson, right? When you think about a Calais Campbell, you think about Dietrich Wise with the New England Patriots, I think somewhere in a combination of those two guys is where you get a Tyree Wilson. Now, the question is this: is this guy going to be able to affect the passer enough, right? Is this a guy that you're going to draft in the top 10 and he's going to get you 10 to 15 sacks? Because if not, then the question is this: are you going to draft a guy that high to stop the run and, be a force defender, right? But we need that pass rush production overall. So for me, DP, Tyree Wilson, man, I really like him as a football player. But when you talk about roster management, you're talking about creating a team. I do want an edge defender that shows that he can consistently get after the quarterback.
No, and I love how you broke that down because you threw out some names: Calais Campbell, Dietrich Wise. Those aren't guys. Now, Calais Campbell's probably going to have a fringe Hall of Fame career, if not Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it
But
should be
Dietrich
a
Wise
Hall of
is
Fame.
a B plus type of player, really good player, productive player for Bill Belichick in that New England Patriots scheme. But is he a guy that averages 12, 13 sacks a year? No. Is he a plus player that you have to double team and he's a game wrecker? No. And that's what you're hoping to draft if you're drafting a guy as the top edge in the class, especially with the Terminator sitting on the board. If you know what I'm saying, it's kind of wild to me, Keith. But you're looking at, let's get into some of these other guys, man. And one of my favorite guys in this class, Keith, is Derek Hall from Auburn. 6'4". We saw him down in Mobile, right? Good looking guy. When you see him, right? Grown man, like 6'4", 250, 255, long arm, explosive first step rusher with that power to convert speed to power and really collapse, right? And understands how to beat up the chest. Always like he knows how to throw body shots. When you bring in for a boxing reference, when he throws these punches and he lands them, Keith, like you can tell it takes the wind out of the pass set for these offensive tackles, right? And the main thing with him is just because of the fact that they have alternated so many different defensive line coaches, he was taught different things, consecutive years, like almost each year of his career down in Auburn. So he's a little under refined in terms of having that true pass rush plan and pass rush package. But we talk about strength. He, talking to the coach, one of the coaches there is like, man, he takes playing the run personal. He wants to stuff the run all the time. Like he never wants a tight end to block him, and he never wants a tackle to wash him off the line and create a running lane. So that right there is going to already put him on the field, Keith, on first and second downs, to where you're, as a defense coordinator, you're comfortable with him. And now it's all about him working with, his pass rush coach in every offseason, continuing to add to his bag. Because right now, I think he has a really high ceiling if he starts to work those inside counters and starts to throw more than just the long arm and speed to power conversion.
Yeah, so that's the thing with this class, and I want to talk to our listeners, right? That through our grades, right, and we have two regions that we go through and we give grades. Man, it's a whole bunch of guys, right? Like we're talking to maybe 10 to 15 edge prospects that fall in that kind of middle to late second to early third, right? So what the NFL Combine could do is just help you check off boxes, right? Because we need something to kind of separate these guys, because we had the Senior Bowl, right? And we thought that, hey, somebody would come in and elevate, separate themselves, kind of a la what Jermaine Johnson did the year before, right? But we didn't really see that, right? So now those guys are still jumbled together, right? Like Ali Gay was looked as a fourth-round prospect, but he flashed in the game, and now you're like, okay, man, all right, this guy back late second, early third type of prospect. Where are we going with this? So the NFL Scouting Combine is going to help us kind of just check some of those athletic boxes. We're like, okay, this guy checks this guy checks that, man, because we know that like big guys who can move, ultimately they win. And man, talking about a big guy that can move, he was at the Senior Bowl. I seen him in person, and I was really impressed with his physical build, and you just wonder what can you get out of him. And that was going back to Clemson, edge rusher KJ Henry, man. This guy was physically impressive, man. I really liked his build. I liked everything about him. I liked his movement skills. But we know that the sack production just hasn't been there. Now, if you ask me, okay, if it's a 4-3 team, I would love him going to a 4-3 team where he can kind of jump right in. He can put his hand in the ground and get after the quarterback. So that was one of the guys that really flashed to me. But man, we have a host of guys, DP. We have Isaiah Foskey. We have BJ Ojulari. We have Dylan Horton from TCU who flashed in the Michigan game. So we have quite a few guys, DP. I want to know if there's somebody else out of this group of late second, early third, where you're looking at them and you're like, man, if this guy performs well, I feel a little bit more comfortable with moving him up my board.
Man, the kid from Iowa, Lucas Van Ness.
Yeah,
like
he's a real hot name right now, too.
Yes, he's a hot name. You talking about turning the stove on high? Like that's what it is for him. Like this guy has a rocket attached to his back right now, Keith. Because out of nowhere, we start seeing him in first round mocks, and when you turn on the tape, you're talking about converting power. This is a powerful rusher, Keith, coming off the edge and just allowing his length and his natural strength to overwhelm tackles. Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski, right? Two of the top tackles that we talked about a couple days ago. So if you haven't checked that out, please go back to the archives and do so. But Keith, the thing with him is that he was a rotational guy because Iowa played their seniors and their upperclassmen, more. They started those guys, and that's where the discussion really kicks in for him, right? It's where, okay, he's raw. Like he's extremely raw in terms of I talked about with Derek Hall. Lucas Van Ness doesn't have a ton of counters either, but he has those physical tools and traits that you look for.
So real quick, I want to ask you a question, DP. Do you think that he's limited as far as his pass rush ability? Like where does he fall for you? Is this a guy that you think can potentially reach double-digit sacks, right? Like put in the right situation, is this a double-digit sack guy?
I think he has the physical ability to, Keith. I look at him and I look at his game and I'm like, all right, similar to Derek Hall, guys who know how to use that power and work around the outside shoulder and outside shade of a tackle, now use that power to open up the inside counter where now he's oversetting because he's trying, instead of being able to quick set you, right? Guys don't want to quick set a really powerful dude because they know, man, my feet are not running. My feet are still. Once he gets me with that power, he can collapse me and even drop me to the ground. So instead, they're going to try and get out there and beat you to the outside and try to go ahead and get ready to meet you at the apex. With him, similar to Hall, being able to just work on those counters. I think if he starts to get that under, and it's all about reps too, because again, for whatever, I know why they played their upperclassmen, but he was probably, in my opinion, their best rusher. I think he was their best talent on the edge. I'm surprised that he came out. I think he could be a 8 to 10 sack guy, Keith. It's just, okay, it's a lot of projection, right? It's a lot of projection with him because we haven't seen him do it at a high clip or high volume. And it's like, okay, he's going to need a lot of reps. But he's working with a great defensive line coach right now, getting prepared for the combine. I'm gonna tell you, I'm looking forward to seeing how he handles the hoop drill to see where that bend is for him.
Yeah, I agree. DP, listen, man, we've talked elite tier 1 edge rushers. We talked tier 2 edge rushers that can separate themselves. But you know what we got to talk about, man? We got to talk about those real difference makers on the interior defensive line. I'm talking about the guys that have potential to be dominant, like a Chris Jones, Aaron Donald, a Javon Hargrave. Yes, we're talking about the IDL, man, coming up next.
Interior defensive line, Keith. A position that it's scrutinized in a sense where it's like, okay, if you're Aaron Donald and Chris Jones, you're sexy, right? You're sexy if you're one of these guys. If you're Brandon Williams and you're 330 pounds and you're a run stuffer, it's like, do we really need that guy? You don't know what you have until you don't have it, right? And it's going to be interesting, Keith, with this interior D-line class. We're not even going to talk about the man beast, Jalen Carter, because he's in the tier all by himself. Yeah, there's nobody that can touch where he is right now, right? He's untouchable in terms of the defensive tackle group. But Keith, in your latest mock, which my mock is coming up tomorrow, this week, Keith, in your latest mock, you talked about, I think it was at the end of the first, you had Kalijah Kancey
to the
Eagles. I think he's like, let's say 6 foot, 6'1", like 280. But man, when you turn on the tape, Keith, this is one disruptive dude. Explosive, physical, violent, gap shooter, single gap penetrator, really can get in the backfield and just wreck some stuff, Keith. And when you think about that next tier underneath Jalen Carter, that's where the question lies. Like, who's in that tier? Because there's a lot of, to me, I'm not gonna lie, in this class, Keith, there's a lot of run stuffers, right? Mm-hmm. There's not a ton of pass rushers at the interior defensive line.
Yeah, so I'm gonna real quick get into Kalijah Kancey, right? You talked about him being a disruptive pass rusher, but then the other flip of that coin, right? Like he's like the Bryce Younger quarterbacks, right? With this guy size, it's something that we've never seen before. But you know why I fell out with this DP? I'm like, it's either gonna work or it's not. And listen, I know that's not a deep in depth type of analytical type situation, but that's what it's gonna come down to, right? It's either gonna work and it's gonna be a home run type of situation where you drafted yourself a double-digit sack guy at the interior defensive line position, or it's just not gonna work at all. But I think when you talk about the back end of the first round, why not take that gamble, right? When it comes down to first round prospects, 50% of them only work out anyway, right? So it's a flip of a coin. So why not flip the coin on a premier position where if you get this, you change the game, right? And we know we're talking about Elijah Cansey. He's at Pittsburgh. So the initial thing was, oh man, it's the next Aaron Donald. I didn't want to hear it, right? I'm like, I hate those type of comps. I know we're doing the simple surface level type situation. So I don't think he's Aaron Donald, but I do think he's a talented man. I think he's a talented football player. At the end of the day, he's undersized. I would love to see what he comes in, what he weighs, just how he moves, see what he runs, things like that. So it'll be definitely be interesting, man. And you talked about just that bracket of guys, man. There's a couple guys that I see at the top that I want to talk about because we have a Brian Bresee, we have a Keon White, and we have Gervon Dexter, right? Like, and those are names where there's a pretty good athletes. Well, I think they have the potential to stop the run, but they also have the potential to get after the quarterback too. So, DP, I want to give you a chance to talk about one of those three guys out of Brian Bresee, Keon White, or Gervon Dexter.
Keon White, man, and Keith, you remember when I came on our meeting over, with the Draft Network, and I did his initial eval, and I was like, man, this kid's a freak. I was like, former tight end, and then it's crazy because he transferred from Old Dominion. And then when you watch the Old Dominion tape, he's rushing from a 2-point stance, and it's like the explosiveness, that first step, just him coming off the ball. And Keith, I think the thing that's going to be pivotal for him is where he is labeled in this class. Some view him as a 3-tech, interior D-line and like a 4-man front, right? Kick him inside, and let him rush ahead of guards. He can do that, but he can also rush off the edge too. So he's one of those kind of chess pieces where a defensive line coach, if I'm a scout, I say, listen, man, this is all on you. I'm bringing you a blank canvas that you can do whatever you want with. This kid has the power, the build, the temperament. He's extremely coachable. Being at the Senior Bowl, we had field access. So being down on the field, I watched him when they were working on different deconstructing drills and handling reach blocks and, and setting the edge and, watching him work with the D-line coach and the coach telling him, no, you didn't do that right. He's like, okay, well, talk to me, coach. What did I do wrong? And he's just a student, man. And he has that. I'm going to tell you the term gentle giant. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that.
Well, DP, we don't want our Giants to be gentle, baby. This football. So I need you to explain that for me.
Off the field, you did not even you didn't notice. And we walked in to do interviews with the players. He's just sitting down, chilling. He's got a book. He's reading, right? He's just relaxing. He's talked to anybody that came up, talked to him. Really nice young man. Then you see him on the field. And you watching, I was like, okay, there's a switch that he flips when he gets between the hashes. You know what I mean? Like I watched him just completely decleat a tight end in run blocking drills. I'm like, yep, you might not want to line back up against him, right? Like it was just one of those. And he gave him that look after the rep, like you had no business being up here with me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he's got a switch, and I love that, right? Like, so this is a young man I'm extremely excited about. Like I said, I think you can play him inside. If I'm like you talk about with KJ Henry, if you're a 4-man front team, or even front team 4-3, you can play him at defensive end or against the run. You can rush him off the edge, or you can reduce him inside.
Yeah. So before we wrap up real quick, because I know we got to wrap up. Man, I'm gonna talk about Florida interior defensive lineman Gervon Dexter, because he's a guy that's in our region. Talking about 6'6", 300 pounds. This guy played all along the front, right? And I expect him to test pretty decently. And you're talking about a guy that can potentially have some buzz. Like I said, he's 6'6", 300 pounds, man. So if this guy runs a sub 5 flat 40, the buzz is going to get there. And you're talking about him rushing the passer, man, it's there. He's just inconsistent. So I think if he goes and interviews, he interviews well, he tests well. This could be a guy that coming into the year, he was a first round guy, right? Like when we talk about the very beginning of the season, and then he slowly fell on the board because of his ability to play the run. He played high and it was inconsistent. But if he comes here, tears up the combine, I think the fact that his measurables are through the charts, right? And his athletic ability is through the charts. he'll be able to climb back up the rankings again and be a hot name.
Yeah, Gervon Dex, like you said, he was a hot name coming into the season. The lack of D-line depth in Florida really like put a stress on him because he had to play more snaps than you would want, right? So you couldn't maximize that frame and that talent, Keith. I'm excited to see him and, like you said, see what he runs in the 40, especially that 10-yard split. I'm excited to see this young man. But guys, we talked about edge, D tackle, Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson. We mentioned Jalen Carter. We talked about a lot of different names. And guys, we always appreciate all the love. Continue to support us. Find us on your favorite audio podcasting apps. And as we always tell you, go to YouTube, smash the subscribe button, smash the like, smash the bell, and then share it so that you can be tapped in to enjoy all of the content that we have for you and coming for you, right? So thank y'all so much for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today. In tomorrow's episode, we're going to look at and preview the combine from the defensive back perspective. I'm talking corners and safeties. For Keith Sanchez, you can find him on Twitter at @TheTalentCode. And for me, I'm Damian Parson. You can find me at DP_NFL. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.